Most people know The Passion of the Christ as the movie that changed modern religious filmmaking. It was raw, unsettling, and honest in a way few films have ever dared to be. But behind every moment on screen, behind every actor, there was a real person with a real home, a spouse, a family, and a private life the audience never saw. This video looks at something simple but often overlooked: the married lives of the actors who brought this story to life. Not the scandals, not the headlines, and not the myths that grew around them, but the actual relationships, the people they came home to, and how those relationships shaped their work on the film and the years that followed.
My wife pointed this out really clearly to me, that the center piece of this film is about forgiveness.
Some marriages were strong, some were strained, some ended, some led to life-changing choices. This isn't a gossip video. It's about real life, how major roles affect families, how faith and fame intersect, and how the most powerful Christian film in modern history left its mark not only on audiences, but on the private lives of the people who made it. If you're ready, let's start with the man at the center of it all, Jim Caviezel. Jim Caviezel, Jesus. When people talk about The Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel usually comes first. His performance is still considered one of the most physically demanding roles ever filmed. What most viewers don't realize is that while he was going through all of that, he was also working on something even harder, building a marriage and a family that could survive the pressure that came with the role. Jim Caviezel married Carrie Broett Caviezel in 1996, years before he became the man who played Jesus. She wasn't part of the entertainment world. She was a teacher and a former college basketball player with a quiet, steady personality. Their life together was simple, private, and far from Hollywood noise. That stability would later become the thing Jim leaned on the most. When Mel Gibson approached him about The Passion, Jim knew the film could change everything, not just for him professionally, but for his marriage. Taking the role meant long months of physical exhaustion, injuries, and public scrutiny. It also meant being associated with a figure people feel strongly about. Some people would praise him, others would attack him. He talked openly about all of this with Carrie.
You've been married 20 years and you guys met on a blind date?
My wife called me up. I was shooting Frequency at the time, and here in New York, and she says, "You forget about that."
She didn't try to push him either way. She told him she would support the decision he believed was right. During filming, Jim suffered multiple injuries, shoulder dislocation.
I was lacerated twice from the whips. I had my left shoulder taken out.
Pneumonia, a lung infection, and even being struck by lightning.
I heard you were struck by lightning at some point.
Yeah, I did. Just don't hang out with me at the...
These weren't minor setbacks. They left him exhausted and in pain. He said that in those moments, he wasn't thinking about fame or career. He was thinking about his wife waiting at home and the idea of finishing what he started. That motivation kept him going. When the film was released, the attention was overwhelming. Jim instantly went from being a respected actor to being the public face of Jesus Christ. That's not something most marriages are built to handle. Some studios didn't want to hire him afterward. Some audiences blurred the line between actor and role. He and Carrie had to adjust to strangers approaching him in public or treating him differently because of the film. But while his career became unpredictable, their private life stayed consistent. Jim often says that his wife is the reason he didn't lose himself. She didn't care about the fame. She didn't care if Hollywood rejected him. She cared about the kind of man he was at home. That grounded him. Years later, Jim and Carrie made a decision that defined their marriage even more. They adopted 3 children from China, all of whom had serious medical needs. It wasn't a symbolic choice. It meant long hospital visits, surgeries, and constant emotional and financial responsibility.
It was a boy who had a brain tumor, and you could see it in and outside his head.
Jim said the decision wasn't heroic. It was simply living out what they believed marriage and family meant. This choice affected everything, from Jim's work schedule to how they approached their faith.
Those children, they're unwanted. And I said, well, I want them.
And it revealed something important about their relationship. It was built for the real world, not for public image. They weren't interested in being a Hollywood couple. They were building a home based on commitment, sacrifice, and a shared belief in serving others. Their marriage wasn't perfect. Jim has talked about difficult periods where the pressure from the industry and his public image put strain on their home life, but they kept showing up for each other. The same quiet support Carrie gave him during the Passion carried through every challenge that followed. She didn't try to change him, and he didn't expect her to carry the weight of his career. They functioned as partners, even today. When Jim speaks about marriage, he doesn't use dramatic language. He talks about simple things, being present, helping with their kids, looking after each other's mental and emotional health. These aren't the kinds of stories that make headlines, but they explain why their relationship lasted while many Hollywood marriages didn't. The irony is that playing Jesus didn't elevate Jim's career the way people expected, but it strengthened the most important part of his life, his family. He walked away from the film with physical scars, industry backlash, and unpredictable job offers. But he also walked away with a deeper understanding of what marriage meant and a stronger bond with the quiet woman who supported him from the start. Before moving on to the next actor, it's worth remembering this. The most intense role of his life didn't define him. His marriage did. And for Jim Caviezel, that turned out to be the thing that lasted. Maia Morgenstern, Mary. When people think of Mary and the Passion of the Christ, they picture calm strength under immense grief. Maia Morgenstern delivered that performance without exaggeration, without theatrics, and without breaking the quiet dignity that defined the character. What's interesting is that her real life carries a similar kind of steadiness, but it's not the same kind of story people expect when they imagine the personal life of an actress who played one of the most honored figures in Christianity. Maia Morgenstern is from Romania, and unlike many actors in the film, she wasn't trying to build a Hollywood career. She was already respected in European theater. At home, she had a family, including her children, and she was navigating the responsibilities of motherhood long before landing the role. Her marriage to actor Claudiu Istidor had already gone through highs and lows. They eventually divorced, but even after that, they maintained a working relationship and continued raising their children in a stable way. There wasn't public drama, and they didn't use the media to attack each other. It was practical and focused on the well-being of their family. When Mel Gibson first approached Maia for the role of Mary, she didn't see it as a path to fame. She saw it as a serious responsibility. She is of Jewish heritage, which made her casting unique and sometimes controversial in the eyes of outsiders. But for Maia, it wasn't about religious conflict. It was about portraying a mother who is watching her son suffer. That perspective connected deeply to her own life experiences as a parent. During filming, she carried a large emotional weight. Many scenes required her to show grief without losing control, strength without aggression, and silence without becoming passive. That kind of performance is draining, and she spoke openly about how she had to protect her emotional energy so she could return home to her children without carrying the heaviness of her character into her personal life. Her family supported her through the production, but she didn't involve them in the atmosphere of the set. She was intentional about keeping her professional and personal world separate. For her, home needed to remain a place where she could be herself, a mother, not a symbol. That balance wasn't easy, especially when the film suddenly became a global phenomenon. When The Passion was released, Maia's life changed in ways she didn't predict. She wasn't seeking global recognition, but the film brought it anyway. People around the world associated her with Mary, and some treated her with a level of reverence that didn't match how she saw herself. She handled it calmly, often redirecting conversations back to her work, her family, and her cultural identity. Her children have spoken about how grounded she remained throughout the unexpected attention. She didn't adopt the behavior of a celebrity. She stayed rooted in her routine, her theater work, and her role as a parent. That stability was important, especially because fame can easily disrupt a home. Instead of letting public perception shape her personal life, she stayed committed to the same priorities she had before the film. Another layer to her story is how she continued working in Romania rather than using The Passion as a stepping stone into American cinema. She valued staying close to her family and maintaining the artistic work that mattered to her. For Maia, career decisions were always tied to what would keep her family life balanced and healthy, even though her marriage had ended before the film. The way she approached co-parenting and personal responsibility created a sense of quiet strength that she brought into her portrayal of Mary. She understood the weight of parenthood. She understood loss and resilience. And she understood how important it is to maintain dignity even when life doesn't go the way you planned. Maia's real story isn't dramatic. It's steady. It's the story of a woman who built a stable life for her children, maintained respect with her former spouse, and kept her identity intact even while playing one of the most recognizable figures in religious history. Her performance in the film may have moved millions, But the strength she brought to that role came from her real life, a life shaped by responsibility, emotional discipline, and commitment to the people she loved. That's the part viewers never saw on screen, but it's the foundation behind everything she did. Monica Bellucci, Mary Magdalene. Monica Bellucci was already a major figure in European cinema long before she appeared in The Passion of the Christ. She had built a career on dramatic roles, fashion work, and a global public image. So when audiences saw her portray Mary Magdalene with restraint and dignity, the contrast was noticeable. And that contrast is something she has lived with in her personal life too, especially when it comes to marriage. Monica Bellucci married French actor Vincent Cassel in 1999. Their relationship was well known in Europe because they were both successful, recognizable, and often appeared together at public events. Unlike many Hollywood couples, they didn't try to present a perfect image. Their marriage was intense, complicated, and openly imperfect. They lived in different countries for long periods due to work. They talked honestly about trust, distance, and the challenges that come with two people pursuing demanding careers. When Monica joined The Passion of the Christ as Mary Magdalene, she didn't approach the role through a religious lens. She approached it as a human story. She said that her focus was not on the character's reputation or the long-standing debates about who Mary Magdalene was. Instead, she looked at her as a woman who stayed near someone she cared for during his suffering, a person who showed loyalty when others walked away. That angle connected with her personally, especially because her own marriage required constant effort and presence. Her relationship with Vincent Cassel was high profile, and the media often treated them like a brand. But at home, they were raising two daughters, trying to maintain privacy, and figuring out how to balance work with family life. Monica has said in interviews that marriage, for her, was not about ownership or control. It was about choosing someone every day, even when life became complicated. While she was filming The Passion, her family life continued in the background without pause. She often traveled back and forth whenever possible, trying to keep stability for her children. That rhythm of work and home was normal for her, but it wasn't easy. Playing Mary Magdalene, a character defined by loyalty and presence, made her think more about what it means to stand with someone through difficulty. She has mentioned that portraying that kind of devotion required a quiet, internal focus, not drama, not emotion for the camera, but steady awareness. Her marriage with Vincent Cassel eventually ended in 2013 after more than a decade together. It wasn't explosive. There were no public fights or accusations. They simply announced the separation and said they would continue raising their daughters with mutual respect. Monica has always avoided giving detailed explanations about the breakup. She prefers to keep that part of her life separate from her public identity. What stands out is that even after the divorce, she and Cassel maintained a calm relationship for the sake of their children. They still speak respectfully about each other and avoid negative stories in the press. That is consistent with how Monica has lived her personal life for years: private, controlled, and intentional. She doesn't reveal more than necessary. The interesting part is how people responded to her role in The Passion. Many viewers were surprised to see an actress known for glamorous roles portray such a restrained, spiritual character. Monica said that working on the film made her think more seriously about themes like forgiveness, loyalty, and suffering, even if she didn't approach them from a religious standpoint. She described the experience as grounding, something that pulled her away from public perception and towards something more personal. Her married life reflects a similar dynamic. It wasn't a story built on perfection. It was built on effort, honesty, and acceptance that relationships change over time. She and Cassel didn't hide those challenges. They navigated them in a way that kept their family at the center, even after going their separate ways. Monica Bellucci's role in The Passion is remembered for its calm strength. Her personal life shows a similar kind of maturity, not dramatic, not idealized, but real. A long marriage that had meaning ended respectfully and left both people focused on their children and their own growth. It's not a Hollywood fairy tale, but it's honest, and that honesty shaped both her performance and her life after the film. Hristo Shopov, pilot. Hristo Shopov didn't expect The Passion of the Christ to become the defining role of his international career. Before the film, he was already well known in Bulgaria, where his family had a long history in the arts. His father was a respected actor, and Hristo grew up surrounded by theater and film. But outside Eastern Europe, he wasn't widely recognized. That changed when he was cast as Pontius Pilate, a role that carries weight far beyond acting. What many viewers don't realize is that Hristo's personal life is almost the opposite of what people associate with a major Hollywood film. He isn't a celebrity who gets followed by the press. He doesn't try to cultivate an image. He keeps his marriage and family life out of the spotlight by choice. In interviews, he rarely talks about them, not because there's something to hide, but because he believes privacy is necessary for a healthy home. Hristo has been married and has children, but he keeps the details within his circle of family and close friends. He isn't active in tabloids, and he doesn't use social media to show off personal moments. This privacy became even more important after The Passion was released, because the role of Pilate comes with a level of controversy built into it. Pilate is not a neutral figure. For many people, he represents authority, compromise, and the moment when justice failed. Hristo understood that viewers would project their own beliefs onto the character. But what he didn't expect was how strongly some audiences reacted to him personally. Playing a historical figure who is remembered for condemning Jesus meant stepping into a role that millions of people have opinions about. After the film came out, Hristo said he felt a wave of public attention that didn't match his usual life. People recognized him on the street far more often, especially in religious communities. Some wanted to talk about the film, some wanted to debate. Others simply saw him as Pilate, which can be uncomfortable for an actor who tries to keep his identity separate from the characters he plays. This sudden attention didn't make him a celebrity in the traditional sense, but it changed how he moved through public spaces. That's where his family became important. They offered stability and routine, while the outside world tried to define him through a single performance. Hristo handled the pressure by staying close to home and focusing on the work that mattered to him: European films, theater, and smaller projects where the environment was familiar. He didn't chase Hollywood roles after The Passion. He didn't try to leverage the success for more global exposure. Instead, he chose consistency over visibility. That decision protected his private life and allowed him to keep his marriage and family insulated from the intensity that came with the film. Another factor is that Hristo never tried to create a moral or theological narrative around his performance. He approached Pilate as a man caught between public pressure and political risk. He said that understanding Pilate meant understanding fear. Fear of instability, fear of losing control, fear of making the wrong decision. That perspective stayed with him long after filming, and he has said that the emotional weight of the role was heavier than he expected at home. Though, he didn't bring that intensity with him. Friends and colleagues describe him as direct, calm, and disciplined, qualities that make life more stable for the people around him. His marriage benefited from that approach. His family wasn't drawn into the noise created by the film. They lived their life the same way before and after the project, with privacy and boundaries. In a movie filled with dramatic performances, Hristo Shopov's role was defined by restraint. His personal life mirrors that same style: steady, private, and grounded. The world saw him as Pilate, a man pulled between power and responsibility. But at home, he stayed focused on being a husband, a father, and a working actor who valued stability over fame. That's the part of his story audiences almost never hear, but it explains why he remained steady under the pressure that followed the film. Luca Lionello, Judas. Luca Lionello's story is one of the most unexpected to come out of the Passion of the Christ. Before the film, he wasn't religious. He didn't practice the faith, and he didn't show much interest in Christianity. He also wasn't looking for a role that would challenge him spiritually. He was simply an actor doing his job, raising a family, and navigating a marriage like anyone else. But everything changed during and after the filming of Judas Iscariot. Luca came from a well-known Italian artistic family. His father, Hristo Lionello, was a respected actor and voice performer. Luca grew up around movies, theater, and entertainment. His personal life was stable, built around his marriage and children. He preferred keeping his home life separate from his work. Even after the Passion, he rarely talked publicly about his marriage other than acknowledging that his family was his anchor long before the film arrived in his life. Before auditioning for Judas, Luca approached the project like any other acting opportunity. He didn't bring faith into the process. His focus was on the psychology of betrayal, what it means for a person to believe they're doing the right thing and then realize they've made a mistake they can't undo. That was the angle he found compelling as an actor. But playing Judas turned out to be more emotionally demanding than he expected. The role required him to enter the mindset of isolation, regret, and internal conflict. Luca later said that filming some of the darker scenes left him thinking about questions he had never taken seriously: forgiveness, guilt, loyalty, and what it means to fall apart as a human being. Throughout the process, he stayed in close contact with his family. They were a stabilizing force while he explored a character defined by instability. People around him noticed that he carried the weight of the role home more than he intended. Judas is not a simple character. He represents the hardest part of the story: the breakdown of trust and the collapse of a friend. For an actor who wasn't religious, stepping into that emotional world felt heavier than anticipated. What changed everything was what happened after the film. Luca has openly said that something shifted in him during production. He didn't describe it dramatically or claim a sudden revelation. His explanation was simple: portraying Judas forced him to confront ideas he had ignored his entire life. It made him look at faith in a different way, not as an institution, but as a personal question. His marriage played a major role in that period. His wife supported him quietly, without pushing him toward or away from anything. She gave him space to process the emotional and psychological experience of the role. That support helped him stay balanced when he began exploring spiritual questions that were entirely new to him. In the months after filming, Luca went through what he described as a slow, steady awakening. He eventually converted to Christianity. He didn't hide the reason. He said that working on The Passion, and especially playing Judas, made him realize how deeply the story affected him. His conversion was not a public stunt. It wasn't connected to career goals. It was a personal shift that took place privately, largely supported by the people closest to him. His wife and children saw the change gradually. It wasn't dramatic. It was a quiet shift in how he approached life, responsibility, and relationships. The man who once treated faith as irrelevant began to treat it as something meaningful. Professionally, Luca continued acting in European films and television, but his life after The Passion was shaped more by what happened inside him than by any career boost the film brought. He spoke more openly about themes like forgiveness and reconciliation, which were not subjects he cared about before working on the movie. His portrayal of Judas is still considered one of the most haunting parts of The Passion, but the real story happened off-screen. An actor who entered the project without faith walked away with a different view of the world, and a marriage that had already been strong became an anchor during that personal transformation. Luca Lionello's story stands out because it shows how a film, especially one dealing with intense themes, can affect someone in ways no script predicts. His marriage remained stable, his family stayed close, and the role he played changed not his public image, but his inner life. That's something no one expected when he was first cast as Judas. Mel Gibson, director. Mel Gibson is impossible to separate from the Passion of the Christ. He financed it, directed it, pushed it forward when studios said no, and carried the pressure of every controversy that came with it. But his personal life at the time, and in the years that followed, was complicated, strained, and very different from the spiritual intensity people attached to the film. Before making The Passion, Mel Gibson had been married for more than 2 decades. He married Robin Moore in 1980, long before he became one of the most recognizable actors in the world. By the time they reached the early 2000s, they had 7 children. Their marriage had seen long periods of stability but also years of growing distance. Mel has admitted that fame, travel, career pressure, and his own personal struggles created tension in the marriage. When he began working on The Passion, the stress level at home increased. Financing the movie independently meant risking tens of millions of dollars. The media criticism was intense, and he was responsible for every decision. He said in interviews that he often came home exhausted and mentally drained. That environment is difficult for any marriage, even a long one. Robin stayed largely out of public view. She rarely spoke to the press and focused on raising their children. While the film was being made, she remained supportive but distant from the spotlight. Mel has said that she helped keep the home functioning while he was pouring everything into the movie. But the gap between their worlds grew wider. A few years after the release of The Passion, Mel and Robin separated. By 2009, they filed for divorce. They didn't release long public statements or attack each other in the media. The divorce settlement was one of the largest in Hollywood history, but the two avoided turning it into a public fight. After 26 years of marriage, the relationship ended quietly, at least from the outside. After the separation, Mel entered a relationship with musician Oksana Grigorieva, and they had a daughter together. That period was marked by conflict, legal disputes, and public scandals. Their disagreements became part of the news cycle in a way that overshadowed his work. The situation was messy and emotional, and it played out while Mel was already dealing with criticism and professional setbacks from earlier controversies. During this time, Mel's personal life looked nothing like the themes of faith and redemption that defined The Passion. He admitted to alcoholism relapses, anger issues, and personal failures. He didn't hide from the fact that his life had unraveled publicly. For many people, the contrast between the man who directed one of the most powerful Christian films and the man going through public turmoil was shocking. But his story didn't end there. After several difficult years, Mel began rebuilding relationships, both personally and professionally. He eventually entered a new long-term partnership with Rosalind Ross, a writer and former equestrian. Their age difference drew attention, but the relationship has been stable. They welcomed a son in 2017. Mel's older children also reconnected with him gradually over time, and he has spoken about wanting to be more present and grounded than he was during his earlier career. Rosalind has been a consistent, steady presence. She doesn't try to reshape Mel's public image. She stays outside most of the attention and focuses on their family life. People who have worked with Mel in recent years say that she brought a calming influence to his life, someone who helps him maintain structure and avoid the instability that once defined his personal world. Mel has acknowledged the contradictions in his life. He knows that directing a film about sacrifice and forgiveness doesn't make him immune to personal failures. He has said that the pressure of fame, the intensity of his career, and his own mistakes damaged his marriage and relationships. He doesn't try to sanitize that part of his story. For viewers of The Passion, Mel Gibson's married life highlights a simple but important truth. Powerful art doesn't always come from perfect people. Sometimes it comes from people who are struggling, rebuilding, and trying to make sense of their own lives. Mel Gibson's legacy is complicated. His marriage of over 25 years ended. His relationships faced public conflict, but he continued to work, parent, and try to repair the parts of his life that broke along the way. Behind the film that changed religious cinema is a man whose personal life reflects both the strength and the fragility that make human stories real. Looking at the married lives of the people behind, The Passion of the Christ reveals something simple. The film was made by ordinary men and women dealing with the same relationship pressures, responsibilities, and personal choices as anyone else. Some, like Caviezel and Maia Morgenstern, leaned on steady home lives that kept them grounded during a demanding production. Others, like Bellucci and Mel Gibson, navigated marriages that changed over time or ended under public pressure. A few actors, including Luca Lionello, experienced personal shifts, spiritual or emotional, that reshaped how they approached family life afterward. And many supporting actors kept their relationships almost entirely separate from their careers, maintaining privacy even when the film became a global phenomenon. What ties their stories together is not perfection, but humanity. Their marriages weren't shaped by the film's religious meaning. They were shaped by daily decisions, showing up for family, handling strain, rebuilding after conflict, or choosing privacy over attention. In the end, the personal lives behind The Passion remind us that impactful work doesn't come from flawless people. It comes from individuals managing real relationships while doing their jobs, carrying both their strengths and their struggles into the work that audiences remember.